Good evening, y'all. Appreciate y'all being here with us today. Before we kind of get started and get into kind of the explanation of what our goals are and why we came together, Comrade Cameron was going to go ahead and make a dua for revolution. So we'll give them the floor and allow them to go ahead and do that for us. Thank you, Comrade Cameron.
In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful, permission to fight has been granted to those who are being fought because they were wronged, and indeed Allah is competent to give them victory. This is the truth of Allah, the Most High, the Almighty.
Amen. Okay. So we came together tonight, obviously, because the people who responded to the call are kind of interested in taking direct action. Now, for everything that we're seeing in regards to the colonial contradictions and them committing genocides against colonized people all across the world. To that end, a comrade of mine out in Michigan, Comrade Lilly, they hit me up about 2 weeks ago telling me about a weapons manufacturer called General Dynamics and was telling me about some of the stuff they do in my area, the area about an hour and a half away from me in Lima, Ohio, and was asking me if I'd be interested in helping them organize against them. So that idea kind of sprouted from a seed into a call to action, using my Twitter platform to reach out to folks. And this is, what we were able to come up with so far. And this, who showed up tonight, isn't even close to everybody that expressed interest. We got interest from people in places like Maine, people in places like Phoenix, Minneapolis, Philadelphia, Chicago, Detroit, Texas, etc. So, the interest is all there, and not everybody who wants to work toward direct action was able to make it to this meeting tonight. So let this meeting kind of start to serve as a seed for a revolutionary direct action and not just focusing just on the theory side of things, but the praxis side of things as well. So Comrade Camera was also volunteering to kind of go ahead and get a little more specific into like what our goals are, what it is we'd like to achieve, and just kind of speak to y'all about what we want to do. So without further ado, I'm going to go ahead and give Comrade Camera the floor back so they can speak to introducing us and letting us know, let y'all know our purpose.
Hey, thank you, Jabir. So we want to kind of do this on a two-pronged thing. First, we have our political education side, which is going to be the Genocide Journal, where we are documenting everything about the ongoing genocide, not just in Palestine, but in all the imperial wars going on at the moment, and down to the chemical compositions of the weapons being sent out, every little bit of detail that we can gather to document and bear witness. And then the other prong is, of course, direct action. As y'all may have heard, there was the action in Tacoma a few weeks ago that was used to, they blockaded a weapons shipment from leaving the port. They blocked it all day. It ended up having to leave. They got some of the arms on it, and they ended up having to leave and go to another port to get refueled and armed there. And then people were there to block it there as well. But we're thinking, doing something a little bit bigger, something a little bit more coordinated, and get them before they get to the boat.
Exactly. That's a fantastic explanation of what we want to do. Thank you, Conrad. And so, like Canberra said, it really is a combination of making sure we're getting our education in via not just consuming the literature of old, all the stuff about the national question this and imperialism that, which goes without saying we should read, but also making sure that we're staying up on literally today's conditions and literally what's going on right now, what General Dynamics is doing, what Lockheed Martin is doing, what all these other different weapons manufacturers are doing. There are comrades who reached out to us wanting to help, but General Dynamics wasn't specifically in that area, but other like pro-Zionist, weapons manufacturers were. And so just through us being able to have a conversation with them, they were able to be like, well, we might not be able to specifically do anything regarding General Dynamics, but we can like protest against and figure out actions against the ones in our own communities. And so coming together is going to kind of help us get the baseline started for figuring out who is doing what where, and what can be done, in your community, understanding that there's all different levels to it. And one of the other reasons we want to have this meeting is to kind of figure out what the real numbers, for support are on the ground, so we can figure out what's possible. Because let's say we do like a robust, recruitment campaign on the ground, but it just really doesn't turn up more than like 50 or 60 people across all these different locations. Well, that doesn't mean we give up. That just means, okay, rather than being able to do what we like to do against the large corporations, we can figure out their small moms and pop suppliers and take action against them instead. So there's a lot of options, no matter what kind of numbers we ultimately end up attracting. But the most important thing is that we heed and put out the initial call, and then heed that call. Make sure that we're heeding what Cameron was saying in terms of just understanding the importance of directly doing things, and being willing to put ourselves out there and not just asking it of other people. So I'm going to go ahead and share a little bit of our progress with y'all in regards to the genocide journal in the chat, and y'all can kind of open it up and take a look. And I'll share my screen and just kind of scroll through it so y'all can kind of see the stuff we've been gathering, just to get an idea of how serious we are. Then we'll talk a little bit about what it is we're asking of y'all tonight. And then, we'll just have a conversation. We don't want to spend too much time on the educational, lecturing, all that stuff. Let's just have a conversation. Let folks talk about how they're feeling, what's going on in their community, what they're wanting to see done, what they're already doing. And let's just really talk, and fill each other out, get to know each other, and just ask any questions, on the human level, and not just the, robotic organizational level. So let's see, where's the chat at? In a second, I'm going to need to step away to make sure I get the link out to anybody else who missed the passcode and wasn't on the initial email list. But I'll do that.
That's another thing is getting people on the email list so that when things like this happen, we can reach everybody easier.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, so what I shared in the chat is what we're calling the genocide journal. And I know it's a little bit on the nose, but so is the fucking genocide that's happening. So what we've been collecting in terms of data and just information that we can find about these different complicit, organizations who have been enabling and participating directly in the genocide of Palestinians, Congolese, Yemenis, and many other people. So we kind of broken it down into sections. So this is the initial link. And actually, it'd be a good idea to go ahead and go over it so that y'all can understand why just looking at general dynamics brought us together more generally. So this is a link from investigate.asfc.org talking about general dynamics. And it says that the world General Dynamics is the world's fifth largest military company. It manufactures weapons used by the Israeli military against Palestinian civilians, and surveillance technology, which is used to monitor the U.S.-Mexico border and surveil immigrant communities. And that's important that they're mentioning the communications technologies, because some of y'all that are here tonight don't actually live in places where General Dynamics is making weapons, but you do live in places where General Dynamics is making the communications technology. And like protesting against those factories is just as important as the weapons, because those communications technologies are going out to the same exact fashions. So everybody has a role to play. So this just, some of this just kind of educates us on the origins of General Dynamics. Fifth largest military company, $38 billion in revenue. 80% of that revenue derives from its defense aspect. It's been working with the U.S. since 1979, I believe. Or no, it's not 1979. It's been working since 1899. I found out under different names. Has $2.4 billion in contracts with the U.S. Department of Defense, and so specifically against Palestinians, General Dynamics supplies the IOF. And we specifically refer to them as the IOF, not the IDF, because they're not defending anything. General Dynamics supplies the Israeli military, or the IOF, with a wide variety of weapons, including various bombs. The company's technologies are also integrated into Israel's main systems, including fighter jets and armed combat vehicles. These weapons are gifted to Israel through the so-called Foreign Military Financing Program. So in terms of organization, that program could be something, to look into researching and organizing against as well. And just ending that program altogether would be a strong goal, for the initiative that we're trying to get started. So yeah, these weapons have repeatedly been used against Palestinian civilians, and they've been used in war crimes, including military offenses against the Gaza Strip, such as Operation Breaking Dawn in 2022. Within 3 days of an unprovoked offensive, that attack killed 33 Palestinians, including 17 civilians, and that was documented by Amnesty International, a complicated organization in its own right, to say the very least. There was Operation Guardian of the Walls. They killed at least 261 Palestinians, including over 60 kids and 40 women at that time. The fatalities were mostly civilians, and more than 2,200 additional Palestinians were injured in that. And, like I said, this just goes over all the different evidences, their complicity in genocide against the Palestinians. And so then we also have specific information, and we go even into more detail in our document about the kind of bombs that they're using over there, BLU 113s. Some of these are made in Texas. A comrade revealed to me they got warplanes, etc. So obviously there's just a lot of information, and y'all can go over it. It's all in the Google Doc, but it just lets you know that we didn't just pick anybody to kind of like start looking into. We picked an organization that is directly tied to, what most directly has captured people's consciousness today. And we'll have a Signal channel for this group that's public. After this, we'll get one set up, and we'll make sure to get that out to y'all for anybody who's interested. This meeting was kind of supposed to be the start of like bringing people together for organizational purposes. So I'm glad that you're asking about Signal chats and things already. Thank you. Like I said, we got articles and links about different violations. Even if you go into, for example, this violation tracker link, it dives specifically into what's been able to be compiled about them and the specific amounts of different violations that they've had and the type of violations. So, for example, they've had 99 safety-related violations since the year 2000, and they've had 30 different environmental-related violations in addition to 20 employment-related ones, 157 total, and they've had to pay out over $264 million off these different violations. When you kind of scroll down deeper into it, these links kind of dive specifically into the violations more. So, for example, if you were to click this link here, this General Dynamics Bath Ironworks, you would be able to go straight to the OSHA data on this and get the specific details as to what happened. And I'm not going to go into all that because it's vast. But the point is we have so much to be able to sift through that we're kind of going to all need to be able to work together from the intellectual side of things to really make sure we're sifting through all this and building the most solid case for building the public consciousness, against General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, and all these other organizations. Because this is just all General Dynamics, Lockheed Martin, their violation tracker page, it doesn't look any worse. It doesn't look any better. All these different defense contractors and weapons manufacturers and whatnot, they all look kind of the same. So that's the situation we're dealing with. In terms of what's needed, our research is obviously in its infancy in terms of like the political education side of things. We are in need of very many things. So one thing that the journal gets into is talking about the different research tasks that we have. If I can get back to the research tasks, to the genocide journal, I'll show y'all that aspect. So we need to be looking into information about the supply chain, the supplier relationships, international partnerships, the end user agreements, which is who they're agreeing to have these weapons end up in the hands of at the end. We need to find out information about regulatory compliance, human rights compliance, any legal actions taken against General Dynamics in this specific case, but against any organization you're interested in helping look into, and which state formations have ties to the IOF, et cetera. So, there's plenty to look into and plenty for individuals to do. but would obviously take a collective, to be able to really build the strongest and most solid case, sifting through all the information. Because even just looking into something like their supply chain is quite the task. It's vast and it's quite the confusing web, and it's made that way on purpose. So that's what we wanted to bring y'all together to help us with, both to understand what the goals of our research would be and what kind of tasks y'all can help with. But then in terms of direct action, so we have some specific goals we wanted to share with y'all as well. Because for all the different locations that we have, we want to be able to disrupt and discontinue any arms shipments to Israel and any other conflicts. We want to be able to build actions of at least 1,000 people at each location. And since we have 5 known locations of contributors to this project so far, that means we're targeting at least 5,000 people across those 5 locations. We want to be able to get 50,000 social media interactions generated to make sure that we're directly causing dialogue to occur about these important subjects. And we want to be able to make sure that we're building relationships. Each individual that's contributing to the project is reaching out to at least 3 community organizations or influential individuals in the community who might be interested in partnering and helping with direct action. Eventually, we want to be able to organize a day of 500 phone calls to representatives and other officials across both politics and the weapons industry who could be pressured and made to do something directly about this, or in the absence of them actually being willing to do anything, should at least have to hear our damn mouths about it. And then we want to be able to put together educational workshops across protest locations that target 1,000 individuals coming to those educational workshops. And of course, last but not least, and what I would say is probably the most important, is once we have the capacity to build such a demonstration one time, we want to be able to sustain those demonstrations. Those are kind of the goals of the Genocide Journal. This is everything we put together. Like I said, we got stuff about suppliers, but we dove into the weeds a bit about the supply chain, piled stuff about lawsuits, but we're just getting started. We can do so much more, the more support that we have. We even started going specifically into not just the weapons that they're using, bunker blasters, heart and penetration bombs, etc. We also started going into exactly what kind of materials those weapons are made of. Steel, aluminum, tungsten, alloys, TNT, RDX, HMX, etc. all go into these. And understanding this information allows us to more specifically isolate who the suppliers, of some of these materials are and how they're sourcing their stuff for our research. So, it lets us get a strong start on the ground when we get to look into the supply chain aspect of things. That's everything in terms of introducing ourselves, what we want to do, and what we've been working on so far. Obviously, we've been able to do a decent amount just in terms of compiling good information and, getting this meeting off the ground. But now it's the most important step in coming together, which is kind of opening the floor, to you comrades and just figuring out what it is we can build together. I'm going to go ahead and give the floor to camera and give them the opportunity to kind of cover anything I might have missed. And then we'll just consider the floor open to everybody from here.
Thank you so much for the, presentation and helping get everybody somewhat up to speed on what we've been working on. And sorry again about the passcode thing. We're going to figure that out for next time. We were expecting so many more people. Unfortunately, the passcode problem, limited accessibility to this meeting. But yeah, no, some of the major points that I think that we should be discussing are particularly where, of course, directing people into where to do their research, which Jabir did a very good job at, making sure where we know to put our research efforts. but then also, again, yeah, reaching out to your local orgs for when we need to start blockading these shipments, getting boots on the ground, getting as many people as possible, as many numbers as possible, understanding how we can increase our reach, increase our audience, both from, an organizing standpoint, get more organizers in, but also just protesters, people who will be that we know can show up and help literally just be bodies on the ground to help prevent these shipments, blocking roadways in and out of, Lockheed Martin weapons depots, blocking the ports, also reaching out to labor organizers specifically within distribution unions, truckers unions, rail unions, shipping unions in general, hell, USPS. For the people who are more, labor minded in their organizing, and then also developing some kind of unified messaging so that we're as clear and precise as possible when getting our message out so that it is understood by the people that need to understand it. We don't want to worry too much about, we want to worry about OPSEC, but, we don't want to be too, and we don't want to stay quiet, we don't want to lose an opportunity to get a lot of people because we're too scared, that might be sus, whatever. Oh yes, and yeah, thank you, Meg. I'm glad that you're able to make it. I am going to cede the floor now to people to discuss. I'm going to step away for a second, but I will be back. Yeah, if you want to start raising your hands or however y'all want to do it.
I know Mark was sharing with me that there were stuff that they wanted to mention when I had mentioned the existence of this meeting at the beginning of the week. So I'll give Mark the opportunity to say what it is he wanted to say.
Okay. So yeah, I definitely had things, when you told me about this meeting initially, that I wanted to talk about. But even within, the amount of time that you'd sent me the genocide journal outline you comrades have put together, and hearing this conversation, I do have other things that things that have kind of occurred to me in this moment that I think are important to talk about. And firstly, thank you to everybody who worked on that document and worked towards getting this meeting together, because there's so much here to work with, and seeing a document that is looking at this from so many different angles has been really refreshing and really helpful in understanding what needs to happen next. In hearing you comrades explain it, the thing that I'm really trying to think through and that I want to put forth to everybody is structurally what does this need to look like? And for me, I see these two aspects of what's being expressed here of a really robust process of political education alongside a process of direct action that can kind of be proportional to the escalation that we see going on right now in terms of the genocide on Palestine. So the thing that occurs to me in terms of why this is such a powerful document and just premise of what you're putting together is by having those two aspects work together, we can really optimize both ends, in the sense that if we have a political education process that consists of researchers and data analysts and human rights lawyers and educators and people that are putting together a curriculum around this, that can also have meetings with people that are working specifically in the direct action aspect of things, and how that data that those researchers are going to get, it's specific to the political education aspect of things, but it's also going to be crucial to the way that the direct action organizers can move. So the first thing that I would want to put forth is having a discussion, and whatever comrades think needs to come before this, I'm open here about, but just what occurs to me is having a discussion about what this looks like structurally in terms of the division of labor, how we compartmentalize departments based on that division of labor, and how we set these departments in relation to one another in order to really optimize the value of each as a collective process. And just in closing, as like a specific thing, as an example, mapping out General Dynamics as far as their corporate headquarters, major manufacturing centers, ports that they take off from, supply chains in general, like that can be an entire process that engages both of these different elements, the political education and the direct action, wherein both of those points are equally necessary to one another. And just the very last thing I want to say is General Dynamic is number 5. It's definitely worth us looking into.
They might be higher since that article was published. Actually,
Okay, got it.
As high as
Got it.
3 now.
Oh, that would make sense. Okay. So yeah, just mainly saying that like understanding the big 5 is definitely, I think mapping one of them is the start, but I think mapping all of them is really where that should end up going. So that's all I'll say. Thank you for the floor. Thank you for all you comrades have done.
Oh, for sure. For sure. Everything you said was fire and it was spot on. The project definitely started laser focused on General Dynamics, but, as soon as we opened it up, to more comrades helping with the document, it started, like the end of the document is focused itself on Lockheed Martin and why there's less stuff now currently on there than there is about General Dynamics. We're already going ahead, starting to expand out to just focusing on everyone. It's just that the initial people we were able to find all live in pretty close proximity to a General Dynamics from the cities that we reached out to. Like Dave here with Mr. Jones in the Zoom, like he's where he is. There's a General Dynamics that makes like the communication technology. A couple of y'all in here are around ones where they directly make the bombs. There's a few different ones because General Dynamics itself, they have what's the word I'm looking for? They have subsections of their corporation that do different parts of their business, which is what Dave and I found out together when we were doing our research the other day. They have like the land division. They have divisions that just do their air stuff. They have divisions that just do their communications technology, etc. And like doing that quickly made it obvious that like, all right, one person or even a couple of people putting their brains to it to do this project isn't going to be enough. Like just to get everything, one of the big 5 is guilty of, you need to put a whole research team together, and they kind of need to be dedicated to doing just that because of how much there is to do. And then at the same time, you need professional organizers, to kind of go ahead and rally the direct action side of things. And we were trying to get both down because technically we already have organizational relationships. Like even this meeting tonight is because, like the Huey P. Gun Club Alpha Company, allowed us to use, their General Assembly chat so that we'd have access to it and not having to worry about an individual putting their own Zoom out there. So yeah, we're definitely on the same page in terms of making sure that we're achieving that balance. There's just kind of a context for why it started off hyper focused on General Dynamics, but definitely we're looking to expand and just expose them all and stop them all. So in terms of keeping up with each other, it looks like in the chat they're going to be collecting the emails, putting together a separate email list of the folks from the chat who want to continue to stay updated and get involved. If you would like to go ahead and continue to have us get in touch with you, go ahead and put that in the chat. But like I said, Meg raised their hand, so let me go ahead.
Hi, can you hear me okay?
Okay, hear you perfectly.
Thank you. Thanks everybody for giving me the floor for a second. I just wanted to clarify or get some clarification on what the other gentleman was speaking on about, the 2-pronged plan initially, or having both the educational aspect and then the boots on the ground aspect. And I think
referring to what Mark was talking about.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I think just to, obviously he can interrupt if I'm misunderstanding, but I think what he was really pressing on was the fact is that we can't mobilize people without the proper education. And so I think he was really trying to understand which one is coming first and how are we using the research and education to mobilize the group of people to then go out and be the boots on the ground, kind of like what is the action plan for that? And how do we plan on educating people in order to get them to move into action? Because obviously the educational part will take some time, right? Yeah, so I just think I just wanted to kind of like restate that and see if that was a plan that you were working on or a strategy you're working on right now to see how that would kind of flesh out.
Oh, for sure. I'm so glad you brought that up. Mark, does that kind of hit on what you were saying?
Yes, absolutely. And on my end, just wanting to clarify that, like, you know, based on this group coming together, there's the assumption that there are people within this group that are going to be down to be part of, you know, direct actions. And knowing that that group is always going to be much smaller than the groups that are that we're developing for political education, things of that nature. And just saying that, like, even as we build those small cadres, understanding that they're going to be incredibly limited when they start out, but also knowing that, like, them having a relationship to these political education groups is what's going to keep them connected to the masses of people and keep them, like, the direct action needs to be kind of, in my mind, it needs to be developed democratically and discursively in, you know, as a result of what the masses of people want to see, and we're going to get more of the masses in the political education groups. Does that resonate with comrades?
Yeah, no, that's checking out with me for sure. What about you, Meg? Was that about what you were?
Yeah, it definitely does. I think that, you know, kind of that definitely falls into my profession as like a content strategist, right? Where it's basically like, okay, you know, just like with all of the mobilization that we've seen coming out of, you know, everything about Palestine, it's because the education came first, right?
Exactly.
And then people are like, we know exactly what this is and what needs to be done. And so now we're moving. And so in this arena, we have to say, okay, what is the mode of education that we're choosing? So is it social media? Is it in person? Is it via email, articles? What is going to be the most effective mode of communication for this project? And then how, out of, say, for instance, 100 people read or see that type of education, what percentage of those individuals, like the other gentleman had mentioned, would actually become a part of that direct action, right? So you have like people here who are like, okay, yeah, we will do the research. We will put together the education. We can do all that. But what percentage of those people who see it will feel able to actually physically go do the thing?
Like do the other aspect of it. That makes perfect sense. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm gonna touch on that in a second because that's a strong point and a lot to say. Thank you, but I'm gonna let Camera get to their point because their hand has been raised for a while. Go ahead, Comrade Camera.
I just wanted to also add on to a little bit of what was being talked about with the direct action is going to be alongside with the education. We've seen time and time again where like people do like mass educating of themselves. We saw it in 2020 where people had this mass waking up, but they, you know, once the protests died down, the initial like big wave protests, people fell off, people stopped educating themselves and they went back to sleep until, you know, now really.
Right.
And so what we want to do is we want to make sure that those fires stay lit, and those fires won't stay lit just with education. There needs to be good examples of work being done to stop the empire so that when people are like, okay, yeah, we're learning, but like, where's it going? What's this going to do? What's, you know, I see so many people that are like, oh, you know, reading doesn't help anybody. And it does help people. People need to be reading. But that, you know, people have been hearing, you know, they've been hearing this call to education. And, you know, at a certain point, people that know, the people who don't. there's a certain, we're not trying to sway hearts. We're trying to, because the hearts that were already going to be swayed, like we've seen genocide after genocide after genocide. The simultaneous action. And the education will also be happening at the actions as well. The direct action isn't going to be entirely separate from the education as well. And I think, social media is an excellent way to get people, especially if we, again, focusing on the unified messaging so that people know where to go. People know, okay, there's people doing the work right now. So who are they? And then, so point them in our direction, get people knowing what's going on. That it isn't just, it's easy to scroll through TikTok or scroll through Twitter or Blue Sky or whatever and just get defeated because you're like, oh, all these people are yelling, they're angry, but it's not going anywhere. And so we want to give people the opportunity, a place to actually put it somewhere that will actually hurt the imperial war machine.
Right. That's a great point in understanding of our position, comrade. So I really want to dive into what's being said too, just also making sure we're all on the same page type stuff, because like you said, while we definitely don't want to focus on just the political education, we want to also focus on direct action. Here's the thing. It's definitely been a problem in organizations that political education is just so hyper focused on that they literally never touch grass enough to do, enough to know who their mailman is, let alone get any kind of organizing done. That's a fact. So we do hyper focus on making sure people understand that we're looking to build toward both. But the strategy for how we go about disseminating our political education was one of the core goals that we have for why we wanted to come together in the first place. Trying to figure out what do we all collectively think the best strategy should be. Understanding that we're not necessarily starting from scratch in terms of what we have access to, because, we already have reach and a platform to some extent. I have tens of thousands of people that I can reach on my personal platform. I'm also on the social media task force directly for organizations that themselves have tens of thousands of reach, and we can get our goals and our perspectives and the fact that we literally exist out there to tens of thousands, just like that, within the snap of a tweet. But in terms of figuring out what the actual strategy for disseminating our education is, that was one of the primary goals for bringing the meeting together in the first place. So not just the getting people together for the action, but, just also figuring out who we have from a literal, what kind of jobs do folks have? What are they doing that could contribute? What are the people's material realities in terms of what they can do? And now we got people talking about, I think Meg said there were communication strategists. We have other people. I know we have people in tech in this organization. We have, or associated with the people in this organization anyways. We have writers, we have artists, we have propagandists. Cam's a very good propagandist, for example, and so, and so we, not only, or is what y'all are saying, stuff that we want to make sure we're considering. The meeting came together as a result of us considering it, and then now we're trying to figure out okay, what do those strategies need to be for disseminating political education? Do we want to do it? What kind of banner do we want to do it under? Exactly what should the focus be? How do we want to go about building the research for all these different avenues that we got to do? Where are we going to find the power? Do we want a student-focused strategy where we get off, where we mostly go focus on recruiting students on college campuses? Do we want to be generally focused on our city in terms of where we're putting our propaganda? There's a lot of stuff, that we wanted to discuss. And so, just making sure that we're all on the same page in terms terms of these are the actions we want to take. This is the education we want to put out there, and how we want to do it is a way we're going to kind of decide on democratically, and then we're just going to kind of come together and do it. And then that's why we put on the list research task and on the list of goals that one of our things was to make sure each of us that are going to go ahead and get involved is reaching out to or already has reached out to at least 3 organizations in the community, understanding that none of us can do it alone, and understanding that we're all going to need somebody, so it's good. So that's kind of where we're at on that. Jeffrey, I see you have your hand raised.
Yes. Hello. Yeah, I guess like kind of what you just said, touching on that, like I think a big
I know both those guys.
Sorry, I just put you on camera. Yeah, I feel like a big part of this is going to be like working with like the organizations like locally for us. Like I know specifically here, we're in Minneapolis. I can think of like 3 or 4 different organizations like right now that are really doing most of the organizing around like pro-Palestine like movements, and even like organizations that I think are focused on political education and protesting against and direct action against like weapons manufacturers for various different reasons, whether it's like climate or specifically being like anti-war, all those types of things. But basically, I guess what I'm getting at is I feel like as a group here, like focusing on like our research and like our specific like kind of goals or like targets, I guess, makes a lot of sense because that's work that we can do individually. But like when it comes to like doing the mass political education, actually getting the numbers and organization that like direct action, I think a lot of that is, we should do it on all fronts, but a lot of it's also going to be like coordinating with these groups, because it should be like a coalition of groups that are already doing it, that already have the people that maybe are doing similar like education and research and things like that. And it probably depends on like what specific companies we focus on and like where those are and where we are too. But yeah.
That's a really good point. Cameron, did you want to go ahead and respond to Jeffrey?
No, Luz had their hand up first.
Okay, go ahead, Luz.
Oh, well, it was for something else. But basically just like, I think that's a good idea. And just in general, if we want to organize with other like anti-colonial groups or groups that are like political education about movements in the global South, or folks who are, doing work for like people of African descent and indigenous people who are also doing similar work or education or political education or similar work.
Cool. Cameron, go ahead.
So what I just wanted to bring up, kind of in relation to Jeffrey was talking about, and Luz, Jabir, and I have discussed it a little bit, is we have somebody that we know of that has offered to do a couple workshops on some very useful strategic military skills. He's teaching skills specifically to people doing decolonial, anti-colonial work with racialized groups, and just to what capacity we may want to use those skills. And I do want to get other people's thoughts on that as well. I don't want to, just...
Well, it's the kind of thing that we'll have to get into as we build capacity, build numbers, and really figure out, like, who we have and what we have. That's just kind of a thing to be thinking about. Like, this is the reality. Like, who do we want to work with and who we do not want to work with? Like, what if,
right.
do we have boundaries and stuff like that? Those are like harder conversations for once there's a time for us to actually be having, those conversations. We just need to keep building up the capacity that we have, and what we need to do is understand who it is we have and what it is we have. This is a really good start counting Meg, who just left. We ended up with 11 people at this meeting. Or something that was one time, put out there on social media, it's pretty solid, especially considering there was this whole malfunction with the password that will definitely get corrected by next meeting. What next steps are going to look like is we're going to put together this kind of Skillshare type email, just letting y'all let us know, like, hey, this is who I am. This is like what I've done. These are the skills that I'm like bringing to like an organization. This is how I can help us like organize on the ground. This is how I can help with the research, etc. Just kind of giving y'all the chance to like talk about yourselves in a format where you're most comfortable. So we'll get that email back out to those who posted their emails in the chat. But like I said, while we're still together, there's still the opportunity to say anything. y'all might want to say. Anybody who just want to talk about how they've been feeling in general about things, or maybe what's been going on in their community, what organizations have been doing. Now it's kind of like the time to be able to just say whatever it is you might want to say before we wrap up into the next meeting. And then meetings will be going forward Sundays at 8 EST. Y'all can always look forward to those, or y'all can always look for the reminder email around noon EST. Each Sunday going forward. We didn't get those out quick enough this week, but we apologize for that. We will make sure that goes out on time going forward. So if anybody wanted to just speak on things in general, please don't hesitate.
I just wanted to say I'm glad so many people from Minneapolis showed up. Me and Luz, we in Minneapolis. All us Minneapolis folks, we got to all get together.
Yeah, there's like 5 people from Minneapolis in this call. The Phoenix area is represented. Chicago's represented. Yeah, we got interest, from all over the place. Like I said, this is not even close to like everybody who was actually
right, not even close. I have hundreds of people who weren't able to make it.
yeah. So like this is like that's what I'm saying. Like we got something cooking. We just got to figure out like what kind of skill sets we have, to build what it is we're looking to build, so that we can put everybody like kind of in their best position to succeed.
Also, I just wanted to add, if anybody knows anybody working in Atlanta, if they can get us in contact with them, that would be awesome.
Yeah, just get in contact with Cameron about that. But let's just confirm real quick that we've gathered all these emails of the ones in the chat, because this is who we'll follow up with, just those who kind of reply here first.
I got. Oh,
you got everybody?
Yes, I believe so.
Cool. So we did record this meeting. We have we have a couple different people who've offered to go ahead and like edit it for us so that we can put it on YouTube. We'll get that done, or we'll get that put out there, and then we'll let y'all know when that's available as well. So you'll be able to follow our progress that way going forward. That way, if you ever miss a meeting, you can just catch up with it from whatever YouTube link we have for y'all at the time. So yeah, this is kind of like a living document and a living project. It's kind of always going to be moving. So yeah, thanks y'all for coming to hear us out, listening to what we had to say for our this initial meeting of the Genocide Journals project. We're going to go ahead and get that email to y'all tonight about the skills share. It'll probably be within the next hour or so. It'll take me. Other than that, anybody who wants to meet back up with us, we'll be here again next Sunday at 8 EST. We definitely look forward to building direct action and revolutionary education with y'all. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Until then, y'all take care, comrades.
Well,
Peace, comrades.